Peace and greetings. This is the story of Hoko Effendi, an esoteric climax. A professor of the art enlightens a whole town at 50 cents a head on the difficulty and exasperating subject of cooking. Nobody had ever heard of the celebrated Hoko Effendi, but the public curiosity to see him was no less keen on that account. In the little western Illinois town on which he had enlightened like a flaming meteor, the visit of the professor of magic was an event. All that was known of him was that he had made his appearance about the time the stagecoach from Shacksville came in, and was supposed to have traveled in that conveyance, that he had procured the printing of several hundred small bills at the office of the Blizzard, promising to pay them for the next day. The evening came. The price of admission to the entertainment was 50 cents for adults, children half price. The celebrated Hoko Effendi was his own doorkeeper, and the people of Spiketown turned out in large numbers. There were no deadheads except the editor of the Blizzard, and the dignified citizen who wore dyed whiskers and a plug hat and announced himself at the door as the mayor. When the audience began to show impatience by the customary stamping and whistling, the world-renowned master of Egyptian magic accepted the proffered service of a leading citizen as doorkeeper and went back to the other end of the hall, disappearing behind the curtain that hid the stage from view. In a few moments he reappeared in front of it and made a pleasing little speech, requesting close attention to the performances, as many of them were of a nature bordering on the supernatural, and promising an entertainment such as had never been seen in Spikestown before and never would again. After performing some curious tricks with playing cards, he announced that the first really difficult feat of the evening would now be shown, that of baking a cake without a pan of any kind. The ladies in the audience, he said, when they bake cakes are compelled to use butter, eggs, flour, sugar, flavoring extract, icing, etc., and put the dough in a hot oven. I do nothing of the kind. By the simple manipulation of flour, syrup, and a hat, I can produce a cake in 5 minutes that no lady in this house can equal. I will make a cake that a committee to be selected from the ladies present will pronounce the best they ever tasted. Will some kind gentleman present oblige me with the loan of a high silk hat? Will you kindly lend it to me? I will take excellent care of it and return it in a few minutes. The mayor demurred. Your hat will not be injured in the least, sir, the magician assured him. I will return it to you without spot, blemish, or stain. I have performed this feat thousands of times without the slightest injury to the hat. The mayor of Spikestown, thus appealed to, relented and handed over his cherished tile. Then the magician produced a pan of flour, which was passed through the audience and unanimously declared to be genuine. He poured it into the hat. Then a quart measure half filled with New Orleans molasses was produced and handed around in like manner, pronounced the pure, unadulterated stuff, and returned to him. He poured this into the hat likewise and stirred the mixture with a long lead pencil. The mayor involuntarily gasped and half rose in his seat, but the wizard again assured him with a wave of the hand, "Your hat will not be injured in the least, my dear sir." And he proceeded with the performance. "Now, ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we will witness the finale, the denouement, as it were, of the unparalleled feat of illusion. I can bake a cake just as well on a piece of ice as on a stove, but as there happens to be a good fire on this stove near the stage, I will bake it on top of that. Again, I assure you, Mr. Mayor, that your hat will not suffer the slightest injury." Stepping briskly down, he placed the hat on the stove. "Now, good people," he said, "keep your eye on that hat till you can count 60. I will retire and prepare the esoteric climax." He mounted the stage and stepped behind the curtain. In a moment, a smoke went up from the hat on the stove, and the odor of something scorched filling the air. The mayor of Spikestown jumped from his seat and with one bound cleared the distance that lay between him and the stove. He lifted his precious hat. The bottom, or rather the top, fell out. The sizzling batter spread out all over. It hissed and sputtered and flew, and even as the mayor held up the hideous ruin of his once glorious hat and looked through it, some of the yellowish mixture trickled on his vest and ran in sad, discouraged, bilious-looking streams down his trousers. His Honor spoke a few words briefly, but emphatically, through his hat, and broke for the stage, followed by several of the leading citizens of Spiketown. Behind the curtain were several empty barrels and boxes, and the back window was up. Somewhere in the wide, wide world, the Wizard of the Orient is still wandering about, happily unaware, doubtless, that a standing reward of $50 and no questions asked is offered by the mayor of Spikestown, Illinois, for information that will lead to the arrest and conviction for the crime of grand larceny, malicious injury, and obtaining money under the false pretenses of one Hoko Effendi, master of Egyptian magic and so-called eighth wonder of the world. Chicago Tribune. I leave you in peace and love.